So this morning, I want to really examine the cost. I want to examine the price that he paid for us and the price of what he is asking us to do in response to what I'm going to call this morning his ultimate sacrifice. And so I've also, in surprise, I don't usually preach with a whole lot of notes. I made a little slide for today, and I'm going to see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, I won't do it next time. But his ultimate sacrifice. I started after watching the movie on Monday. I started with the class, and I said, "There's a cost," and we just watched a recreation of the cost. And this, Mel Gibson and Hollywood, they did a fantastic job at portraying the pain, of portraying the suffering that he went through, but it was just a portrayal. It's a movie. It pales in comparison to the actual cost that he paid. It pales in comparison to the actual sacrifice. Yep. I couldn't do it either, brother. Couldn't do it. Yet, he calls us to a life of imitation. He calls us to a life of following his example. In Hebrews 9 there at the bottom, that says, "He has been manifest to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself." See, this cost that he stepped up to the plate to pay. Sometimes we can think of it as just a moment in time. It was, a 4 or 5 day event that Jesus had to go through. But the truth is, it was his entire life. Right? From the moment he had consciousness, we don't know, it's such a weird concept for us that God could be born a baby, that God could be born a human. But from the moment he had consciousness, his Father began to, if not in fullness or in little slices one day at a time, he began to reveal to him the price that he was going to have to pay. He began to reveal to him the suffering that he was going to have to endure for us. Right? And we know that he warns his disciples over and over again. I forget the number of times he foretells his death, but he reminds his disciples, this is going to happen. Then they didn't get it. They didn't understand what was coming, but he was walking through this life that he was given to live. He was walking through this life with the knowledge that he would have to pay it, that he would have to lay down his life in this horrendously brutal sacrifice. And he did it for us, brother. Come on. And so the price of his sacrifice, it's important for us to understand that there was a cost to our forgiveness that is more than just a 5-day event. It's more than just what Mel Gibson and Hollywood was able to portray for us. It goes so much deeper. When you look at the life of Jesus, it was something he carried with him. And so I've done a little list here of the things that he carried. But, one of the first things that he carried through life was all of the slander and the insults that were hurled his way. Here was Jesus living in perfect innocence. Here he was doing all of the acts of kindness of God towards these sinners, towards these human beings that did not deserve a love like his. And he was healing them, and he was delivering them, and he was setting them free, and he was proving who he was. And over and over again, they insulted him, and they slandered him, and they lied about him. And I think about it in my own life, like if somebody slanders me one time, if somebody insults me or accuses me falsely one time, sometimes it has the power to ruin my entire month. Like I'd like to say maybe it just ruins my day, but sometimes it has the power to ruin my entire month. Over and over again, I play the scenario out in my brain. I'm going to sleep, and I'm like, I wish I said that to them instead of, I wish I... We just play it over, and we carry it. It's like a physical weight that we carry on our shoulders. We carry it to our beds when we go to sleep at night. We replay it, and he walked this earth carrying the weight of their slander, the weight of their insults, the weight of their false accusations. He just carried it with him. Over and over and over again, he healed them. He loved them. He spoke the truth to them. And they could not see it. They did not value it. And he carried that. The physical and the emotional torment of all of those words spoken against him, the physical and the emotional torment of knowing that they're not seeing what he's trying to teach them. Over and over again, he says, those who have ears, let them hear. Those that have eyes, let them see what I'm saying, what I'm showing you. And crowds of thousands walked away, not knowing what he was saying, not seeing what he was laying out for them. He carried the weight of that on his shoulders. If you've ever been misunderstood, you know. I have the privilege to preach a message every once in a while, and when I preach a flop, man, it weighs on me. I have to get Johnny. I'm like, Johnny, pray for me. Steve, can you give me some feedback? How can I do that better? Did I miss it? Did I blow it? It weighs on me because I want to teach you something that's of value. I want to show you something that he's saying, that he's doing. And he had crowds of thousands of people not understand what he was saying, not value what he was showing them, not take it into heart. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is John 6, and it's like 1,000 people go across the sea to follow him. And then within a couple of hours, they all leave saying, this guy is flipping weird, man. He's telling us to eat his flesh and drink his blood. Who can hear these words? Who can withstand these sayings? It's weird. And they all leave him. And he looks at this crowd leaving him, and he turns to his 12 and he says, do you want to go too? He carried this weight with him. It wasn't just 5 days worth of suffering. It was a lifetime of weight. But then we get to the event. We get to the betrayal. We get to the fact that Judas, this disciple that had been with him for all of the ministry, had seen firsthand all of these miracles taking place. He had heard every word spoken. He had witnessed Jesus walking on the water. He had seen it all. And he sells him out for 30 pieces of silver. And he warns Peter, before the night is over, you're going to betray me 3 times. You're going to deny me 3 times. He's in the garden praying to the Father, Father, if there's any way that this cup may pass from me, please take it. Please don't make me go through this. To the point of agony where the capillaries in his forehead are bursting from the stress. It's like, I've been stressed, but I've never been that stressed. I've been worried, but I've never been that worried. I've been concerned, never been concerned to the point where he's sweating blood, begging the Father, if there is any other way, would you take this cup from me? Yet he says what he says, Lord, not my will, but yours be done. And he goes and he's handed over into the hands of the guards. He's taken into the trial, and he's slapped and he's beaten, and has his beard pulled out of his face, and he's bruised, and he's pushed over, and he's ridiculed some more, and he's insulted some more. And it's like, we watched the movie on Friday, on Monday, and it's just, it's brutal. But he goes and he goes forward. Each moment that he endures, the Bible says he has legions of angels at his beck and call. He has every opportunity to say, that's enough. But he goes forward and he's whipped with that cat of nine tails where it just grabs into the flesh of his back and pulls away chunks of his flesh, open wounds on his back. Each time he's whipped for what we committed. This perfectly innocent, this beautifully holy Savior of ours is whipped and torn to shreds for our sin. And he goes forward. And he goes forward, knowing he could stop it at any moment, but he goes forward. That crown, that horrible crown of thorns is placed upon his head, and those thorns digging deep into the skin of his scalp as a mockery to who he was, as an insult to what he was going through. You think you're a king, oh Jesus of Nazareth. You think you're a king. Who are you to call yourself a king? And he goes forward to the cross. And the cross is where we think it ends, as those nails are drawn into his hands and his wrists and his feet. But see, at this point, we've only considered the natural weight that he's carried, the physical pain that he's carried. But what we don't see, because we don't understand it, we have glimpses and moments of closeness with the Father, but we don't understand the kind of perfect relationship that Jesus had with the Father, where there was this perfect communion, this complete closeness with him, where nothing was hidden. Everything was laid bare before the Father. And for the first time, as the weight of the world's sin, the spiritual weight of the world's sin cloaked him, came upon his shoulders, came upon his back, clouded him in darkness. All of our guilt, all of our poor decisions, all of our evil and wicked ways, as it cloaked him, there was separation for the first time in his life. He was separated from the Father. And what he quotes when he says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me, is from Psalm 22. And this is the quote that I want to read as the example of the price that he paid for us. And it's here. We're just going to pick it up in 14 there, Dan. It says, I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaves to my jaws. And you lay me in the dust of death. See, this was the price. The cup that we drink, the bread that we eat, this was the price of his sacrifice. Now we know the story doesn't end at his sacrifice, but he raises. He gets out of that grave and he goes and he finds his disciples and he charges them. This incredible charge. He says, I have walked this example before you. Now I pass the baton. The calling that the Father has called me by, I give you the same calling. As I have made disciples of you, you go forth and make disciples of every nation, proclaiming to them everything that I've shown you, everything that I've taught you, everything that I've given you as an example. And these words that he spoke to them, these words of obedience, begin to take shape in their life. And so he shows them the price of their obedience, and he shows us the price of our obedience. So the question there is, do you know what he has commanded his followers to do? See, just as he knew what he would have to do, he had to walk this world knowing how he was going to die. He had to walk this world knowing that he was going to pay this cost for everybody that insulted him, everybody that accused him falsely, everybody that didn't value anything that he was doing, people that were ridiculing him and mocking him. He walked this world knowing that he would die this death for them. And then he leaves this ridiculous command. The new commandment I give you, that you love one another even as I have loved you. See, at that dinner, when he was speaking to them, they didn't understand. They said, you know what, I think I can do that. No problem, Peter said. No problem, Jesus. You know, you've already laid your hands on us, and we've already gone out, and we've already healed the sick, and we've already cast out the demons, and we've already done the stuff. No problem, Jesus. And we all know that they get a rude wake-up call in a couple hours. Right? But I think about it in our lives. How often do we read that verse in that context? I just want to do the stuff, the fun stuff, the powerful stuff, the celebrated stuff, the acknowledged stuff, the stuff that brings attention to me and shows everybody how awesome I am, how valued I am, how good of a speaker I am, how good of a Christian I am. How often we read these verses and we see it in that light. But you see, he defined this love a different way. And in a couple days, they're going to wake up and they're going to understand it's not just the celebrated stuff that he's asking us to love and to show the world. It's the stuff that doesn't get seen. It's the stuff that isn't valued. It's the stuff that brings us this despise, this ridicule. It's the stuff that costs. It's the stuff that costs. And I wonder, then when we go back and we read through his words, when we go back and we look at what he's asked us to do, do we read these things through that lens of cost? I know that I am so guilty of not. I am guilty of reading these things, even the tough things, like love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. I'm guilty of reading them as though it's going to be easy. I'm guilty of reading it and going, it's no big deal. I can do it. It's all right. I got Jesus in my heart. Right? But when the rubber meets the road and when the challenge is in front of us, I'm guilty. Lord, is there a way out of this cost? Is there a way that I can hold on to my offense? Is there a way that I cannot forgive this person? Is there a way that I can be selfish with my time? Is there a way that I can not love my enemies? Is there another way? See, what I think we forget is we go into reading the Bible as a way, we want to define what those words on those pages say. We want to interpret them how we want to interpret them. Rather than going into this Bible, going into these words of Jesus to have him define what they say. For him to define what love is. For him to define what he's asking us to do. for him to define what obedience looks like. And this is the price of our obedience, is to step back from our own definitions of love, to step back from our own definitions of what obedience is, to step back from our own definitions of what he's asking us to do. See, obedience isn't truly obedience if you only do what you agree with. It's not truly obedience if you're only doing what you feel good about doing. See, obedience is expressed through loyalty and trust when we do what we don't want to do, when he's asking us to do it. Just like Jesus praying in the garden and sweating blood, he didn't want to do it. But he trusted. He was loyal. He was faithful to what the Father had shown him, what he had put in front of him to do, and he did it. And he said, then, follow me. These things we say all the time, deny yourself, pick up your cross, follow me. What does that mean, Jesus? I pray and I hope that none of us have literal crosses in our life, but we don't get to decide. We don't get to define it. I don't get to define it. It has to be him that defines what our obedience will look like. And it starts on the pages of this book. It starts by reading these words. We say it all the time. Those that build their lives on these words of his, they're going to be the wise men. They're going to be the ones that built their house on the rock. We say it all the time, but then when we read them, we go, no, I don't like that one. It's okay. If my foundation's missing a couple blocks, it's all right. A little bit of sand wouldn't hurt. Right? We argue against it. And then we wonder why our foundations don't stand like he said they would stand. Why our lives don't produce the fruit that he said they would produce. And that's because, again, I think we forget the price of this love that we've received. Right? His love on the cross was not just this moment in time, but it was this profound life, this profound act that changed everything for humanity and is still changing things for us these 2,000 years later. The price of his love was not a cheap gift. It was not 5 days of suffering. He's still ridiculed. To this day, he is ridiculed. To this day, he is mocked. To this day, he is insulted. To this day, his love and his teachings and his words are rejected. And some of the times, we are the ones that reject them. The price that he paid to die for us is a price that goes on into eternity. He's still paying it. He has to look at us on this side of the cross. He has to look at this, reject him. Look at us, not follow him. Look at us, not obey him, and say, I'm going to love them anyways. I'm going to choose them anyways. I'm going to call them anyways. I'm going to heal them anyways. The price that I'm willing to pay to love them is everything. And so Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 4. He says, we are always carrying about in the body the dying of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. See, what Paul was explaining to the people in Corinth was he suffers a lot. Paul, this hero of our faith, he gets himself in a lot of situations where people make him suffer. for the preaching of the gospel. He was arrested and beaten and persecuted, and ultimately he was put to death. He was beheaded in Rome. He was mocked. He was ridiculed. The people in Corinth were ridiculing him because they started listening to other leaders that said it was okay that they didn't pay such a high cost for their obedience. They said it was okay that they sprinkle in a little sexual immorality. They said it was okay that they sprinkled in a little disobedience, a little perversion, a little drunkenness, a little debauchery. It's okay, don't worry about it. This cup and this bread, it'll cover it. Forgetting that the bread and the cup of his suffering, of his forgiveness, of his love, cost the creator of the earth everything he had to give. And Paul has to go into Corinth and he has to defend himself before these people. He was the one that brought the gospel to them and performed all these miracles in front of them and performed all of these deliverances before them. And he had to go into to defend himself. Defend the cost of his love. I'm persecuted, I'm beat down, I'm ridiculed, and I'm mocked, but I do this. I carry this death of Jesus in my body. I'm willing to let my love cost something. Because as I let it cost me something, then I get to have his life in my body. In this church, this is what I feel him just begging us, just challenging us to stand to rise to. You know, we ask all the time, why don't I see your kingdom coming in my life the way that I want to see your kingdom coming in my life? Why don't I have victory over this depression? Why don't I have victory over this sin? Why don't I have victory over this unforgiveness and this hate and this burden? Just like in Corinth, he challenges them and just... You think that this is good? You think this is going to work out well for you? When you sprinkle in all of this stuff, when you add all of this stuff, when you cheapen the cost that I paid for you? And so Paul just challenges the heck out of them. He says this thing that we're just all afraid of. We're so afraid of repeating. He literally tells them to start casting people out of their midst, casting people out of their church. He says, go and turn him over to the devil. Go turn him over. Go cast him out. Get the wickedness out of your midst. Let him suffer in his sin for the sake that he might turn and he might come back to the knowledge of the truth, that he might repent, that he might start valuing the cost that Jesus paid for us. If we say, it just makes us uncomfortable. I can feel the discomfort in the room right now. But it's the truth. And then what we see in Paul's life is the things that we long for. It's the things that we say we're desperate for, the things that we say we're going after. We can't go after them, and we can't receive them the way that the Lord wants us to unless we value this love, unless we put a price on our obedience and ask ourselves these tough questions. Does the price that he paid for me outweigh the price that I'm willing to pay for him? Am I willing to do what he's asking me to do? Am I willing for it to cost me something that's inconvenient? And I'm willing for it to cost me something that's uncomfortable? Am I willing to let it change me? Challenge me? inspire me? Or do my needs, do my wants, do my desires, do my comforts outweigh what he did? His discomfort, his pain, his suffering. His love cost him everything he had to give us. Everything. There was nothing left on the table to give. His love was laid out for us. And so I've got 3 questions that I want us to leave here today asking ourselves. Number 1 is, do you know what he paid for you? Have you considered what he had to go through? Really consider, not just reading it as the Easter story, not just hearing the words that Johnny shared this morning and just going, yeah, this is what happens when we take communion. We think about the body, we think about the blood. But have you meditated on it? Have you let it come into you? Like Paul said, I let the dying of Christ come into me so that the life of Christ can be manifest in my body, so that I can carry the life, so that I can carry the hope, so that I can carry the peace with me. Have I considered, have I brought in to myself his suffering, what he chose to do for me? Number 2 is, do I even know what he's asking me to do? Or have I so far removed myself from his words that did I make what he's asking me to do, like show up on Sunday morning, which is a really good thing to do. Don't stop doing it. But have I minimized the Christian walk to church attendance? Have I minimized it to giving a couple dollars in the offering? Have I minimized it to, doing something one day a month that's, not selfish? Or have I actually read these words? Have I read the instructions that are found in these red letters? Have I looked at what he's asking us to do? Because, for me, if I'm being honest, I spent years of my Christian life not really thinking it was that clear. Going, I don't know what he's asking me to do. I'm so frustrated. But when I really started opening this book, when I really started studying, when I really started reading the red letters, it was like, I can't believe it's so clear. I can't believe it's so right in front of my face. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it's stated so clear what he's asking us to do. Have you read them? Do you know what he asks? And finally, the most important of the questions is, what am I willing to do about it? What am I willing to do about when I'm faced with the facts, the truth of his suffering? What am I willing to do about the cost that he was willing to pay for me? What am I willing to do about the things that he asked me to do? Have I drawn an arbitrary line somewhere? It says, Jesus, I'll go this far, but as soon as we go over here, that's too much. I'm too uncomfortable. It just costs too much to stand right here. But I'll stand right here. I'll do, even if the worship is really good on Sunday morning, I might even put one foot over here. Ow, it's hot. Right? Read the letters of the apostles. It doesn't work out well for people who approach it that way. But again, we read this through a different lens, right? The whole room is heavy. I see it on every single person's face. But then you read Paul. When he says things like, I consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, these light and momentary afflictions that we go through. He's literally talking about being beaten and imprisoned and facing the threat of being executed. And he goes, this light and momentary affliction. How can you see life that way? I'm insulted one time and my whole week is screwed up. And Paul goes, it's a light and momentary affliction in comparison to the life that he's offering us, in comparison to the love that he has already poured out, in comparison to the relationship you get to have with the Creator God who has birthed stars and formed planets, heals the sick, cleanses lepers, sets captives free, raises the dead. It's a light and momentary affliction, this obedience that he calls us to, this challenge that he gives us in the light of who he is. This is not a heavy message, though it feels very heavy. This is a key that opens the door to the abundant life that he calls us to the kingdom that has every one of our needs met, that releases to us the power to forgive and to be set free from all of our life's pain, and to walk into life knowing confidently that he loves us, that we are chosen, that we are his. So stand with me. You know what's the best prayer in the world? Jesus, help me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate it. And please make sure that you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our videos or our live stream. You can also support the Father's House financially by clicking the Give button. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.